Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested independently from several sources. Amy plays her commander and Nick counters it with Transcendent Dragon. Can Nick then play Amy's commander, or can Amy stop him from playing it by moving it to her command zone? Alright, so the first important fact that we'll need to answer this question is exactly how the game moves a commander back into the command zone. There are actually two different ways this can happen. If a player's commander is going to their library or hand, that player can elect to move it to the command zone instead. There's never any point at which the commander is physically in the hand or library if it goes to the command zone this way. On the other hand, if a commander is in a graveyard or the exile zone and it was put there since the last time state-based actions were performed, its controller can elect to move it from there to the command zone. Notice the difference. In this case, the commander actually does physically move to the graveyard or exile zone before going to the command zone. As an aside, for those of you who are interested in rules history, this actually used to work the other way, so that anytime your commander was getting put into any zone besides the stack or battlefield, you could choose to put it into the command zone instead of whatever zone it was going to. The rules were changed such that the commander briefly hits the graveyard and the exile zone so that commanders with abilities that trigger when they go to the graveyard would work properly. I talk about another consequence of this change in my video on how It That Betrays works with commanders, and this distinction will be important for this ruling too. Next, let's carefully read the text on Transcendent Dragon, and we'll see that it does not give permission to cast the spell for a set duration. Rather, an instruction in the triggered ability tells Nick to cast that spell right at that time. Casting the spell, therefore, happens during the resolution of Transcendent Dragon's ability, rather than using the normal system of timing and priority. This is important because state-based actions do not get performed in the middle of a spell or ability resolving. They wait until after all the steps of that spell's instructions have been performed. Putting that together with the first important fact that we were talking about, we're now ready to outline exactly what officially happens in the game to answer the question from the original problem statement. First, Transcendent Dragon's ability counters Amy's commander. Countering it exiles that card rather than putting it into Amy's graveyard. Then, Nick has the opportunity to cast Amy's commander from the exile zone without paying its mana cost. After that, state-based actions will be performed, but because Amy's commander is on the stack by this point, she will not have a chance to move it into the command zone. In contrast, let's have a look at this Kheru Spellsnatcher. As you can see, its effect functions a little differently. It defines a duration where its controller will be able to cast the countered spell from exile. Because the Kheru Spellsnatcher's ability does not include an instruction to cast that spell as part of the ability's resolution, casting the spell from exile would require Nick to have priority. Like before, let's go through exactly how this would officially play out. First, Kheru Spellsnatcher's ability counters Amy's commander. Countering it exiles that card rather than putting it into Amy's graveyard. Then, the Kheru Spellsnatcher ability sets up a continuous effect that modifies the rules of the game, such that Nick is allowed to cast the exiled card. After all the instructions on this ability have been performed, the game will check to see if any state-based actions need to be performed. Amy's commander is in the exile zone and was put there since the last time state-based actions were performed, so she can choose to move it into her command zone. If she doesn't, Nick could cast her commander, but he would have to have priority in order to do so. He would also need to follow the normal timing restrictions applicable to casting that spell. For example, if it does not have flash, he would need to cast it during his main phase when the stack was empty. On the other hand, if Amy does choose to move her commander to her command zone, Nick will not be able to cast it anymore, since Kheru Spellsnatcher only gives permission to cast the card as long as it remains exiled. For more information about the difference between these types of effects, I recommend my video titled, How Do You Cast a Spell Without Priority? But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling. Until then, I hope you have a great day.